On Conversations with Channelers, we answer questions that many of our viewers are curious about and share a platform that helps humans connect to spirit. Each channeler has their own unique way to bring through information. I am your host, Heidi Freilich. Welcome to our program. Hello, everyone. Hi, Robin.
Hi,
And
Heidi.
welcome Daniel Scranton, our guest today to the show. Hi,
Hi,
Daniel.
everybody. Hi.
We wanted to get started today with Daniel. If you could just give us a little background on what specifically you do.
Well, I mostly am known as a channeler, and most people know my work with the Arcturian Council, who
Mhm.
I've been channeling now for about 7 years. But prior to that, I channeled many different groups, and I still channel different groups in group sessions and when private clients want to speak to, say, Kuan Yin or Yeshua or someone like that, then I'll channel them as well. But I've been producing channel material from the Arcturian Council very consistently on almost a daily basis, and for several years it was a daily basis, and
Okay,
putting those channeled messages out there to the world.
nice. This all began for you 7 years ago, or did you have something that started before that time?
No, my journey all started in 2010, but I started channeling the Arcturian 7 years ago.
Oh,
So
okay,
the
okay.
first group I brought through, it was a very typical experience. A lot of channelers experience this where they start channeling and they don't know who they're channeling and there's no name given. And
Yep.
and that's a lot like Bashar. That was a name that Daryl had to come up with for that entity. And Abraham was a name that Esther had to come up with for that collective. And so I was being called to come up with a name, and it was very hard for me at first to pin them down with a name because it seemed like such a huge task. But eventually I channeled one and I got confirmation on it almost immediately. And the name that they gave me was the Creators.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what did that first initiation to this in 2010, what did that look like? Did you
It
have
was
some,
Yeah,
did
it
you
was
have,
a lot of different things that happened.
mhm.
It started with Reiki, me doing Reiki on people and noticing that my hands would move by themselves, and then my head would go like this. And then when my lips started moving and making whispering sounds, that's when I thought, oh, maybe I'm going to channel. And then a couple months after that, so at that point, I'm just doing Reiki on as many people as I can because I really like it. I really like the sensation of having the energy flowing to me and through me. But I wasn't thinking right away, like, okay, now I got to pursue this channeling thing.
Mhm.
Because I had never thought of myself as someone who would be able to do it, even though I was a huge channeling enthusiast. I followed Esther and Abraham around the whole world, going on their workshops and cruises. And then in March of 2010, I became very distraught in my personal life. I had some physical pain. I had some real marital difficulties, and I really didn't want to be here anymore. And I
Mhm.
sort of had one of those moments of crying out and saying, I just want to leave. I don't want to be here. And yet there's no way I could have ended my life because my then wife, her brother had committed suicide like a year
Mm.
prior. So there's just no way I was going to do it. But the thought was really present with me that I just wanted to leave. And
Mhm.
then not that night, but the night after, I had this weird dream. It was one of those really vivid dreams where I looked at the guy who was Abraham's videographer at the time, that my friend Peter, and he was very interested in extraterrestrials, but I wasn't. So every time he would talk about extraterrestrials, I'd kind of roll my eyes. And in the dream, it's just me and him standing there. And I look at him and I say, I understand now about the other beings. And I woke up from that dream and I was receiving a huge download of energy through my body. And it was coming in through the crown, and moving all the way down like a wave of energy through my body. And it was complete ecstasy. It was so good feeling that I can't compare it to anything else. Like when people talk about their near-death experiences and they try to tell you what that love was like they experienced, it's sort of like that. It's just so ineffable. It's so beyond words or anything we have here in comparison to it. It's like the only way you could really describe it is like having a million orgasms at once, because it was like this full body ecstasy. And I just was lying there going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, thinking that I was getting a healing for the pain that I had in my body. And because I was such an Abraham enthusiast, Abraham says, you ask, it's given. And I thought, well, I've been doing a lot of asking. This must be the me receiving now of that energy. But then I wondered as it was happening, what does this have to do with that dream? And then I wondered, what does this have to do with aliens? Because when I saw Peter in the dream and I said other beings I knew, I meant aliens. Mm. And so I just thought the word aliens, and I got a huge surge of that energy through my body. And so I just kept thinking it over and over again to get more of it. It was like a drug, And then I eventually started asking them questions. And I would ask a question, and if the answer was no, I would receive no energy. And if it was yes, I would get a huge surge of it. And then I thought, well, maybe you're in the room with me and I can see you if I open my eyes. And I opened my eyes and it all started over again with the huge surges, even though I couldn't see anything. It was like going through the whole experience from the beginning again until it ended at some point. And then from there, I got really interested in what I could feel, like what is possible for me to feel in my body, because I wasn't on drugs and I wasn't having a sexual experience. It was just that's available, like that kind of energy is available. So I just wanted it again. And I just kept adding more of the opening up to feel that into my meditations.
Okay. So would you say, because Robin, we've discussed this and she'll probably go into it a little bit with you, that she's had a Kundalini awakening. Would you describe that feeling of ecstasy or that full body orgasm to be a Kundalini activation that you had? Would you assume that or not necessarily?
Mm-hmm. It could be that. My understanding has always been that it comes up from the base of the spine, though. So the reason I think it's different than that too is because I do think there was extraterrestrial involvement in this. I do think that, I know that people who have studied Dolores Cannon and other people have been told by different sources that we're being worked on by ETs, that ETs do come in and they give us these attunements, these activations, these upgrades, and so on, and we're asleep during it. And it really felt like this was what I needed to have happen. And so there was some sort of ET intervention to get me and my body ready for what would happen 8 months later, which is that I would start to channel on a regular basis the creators.
Sure. Robin, would you want to respond or weigh in on that information?
I guess what I would comment on, what I know of the Kundalini, having experienced it, I did have the rise come up from the bottom, but it also came down a couple of years later through the top of my head because it wasn't able to make its full ascent on the way up. I had some blockages and it veered off, and I had a couple of years of not feeling the best. And I actually just had an inner knowing that it definitely hit probably the heart chakra, couldn't make it through. And then about 2 years later, there were other little experiences that were going on, but it very much just like a lightning bolt came down through the top of my head. And then I felt that whooshing noise as it came down. And it's my understanding that once you have had your Kundalini rise, you don't have to do it from one lifetime to the next. It's kind of a one and done kind of deal. So what I'm surmising for you, quite possibly, is that you probably had an upward rising as a human in another lifetime, and then you simply re-experienced. It can come down from the top once it has made its rise, once
Mm.
it's ascent. And that does make more sense that you get the channeling experience, because not all channelers have their Kundalini activated, but the ones that do oftentimes become channelers. It becomes an energy that's very attractive to other entities to want to use. It has a magnetism.
Mm.
So they're very spreadable. It grows very fast, and it attracts a lot of attention and people. And you seem like a pretty grounded guy from what I can tell talking to you. You're not like caught up in the experience or thinking you're better than anybody else or using it for anything other than to help humanity. But that doesn't really mean that Kundalini could not be used that way, because anything that a human wants to create in their experience, certainly if they want that rising and they focus upon it, they're going to get it. But if they haven't purified their centers, if they're holding a lot of negativity, they could become the reproducers of that kind of negativity. They could take advantage of people because they become very attractive. People are drawn to them because of that energy. And so my group in particular talks a lot about that they're really not interested in their activating people or assisting in activations of people. Not that they're excluding anyone, but they're kind of drawing to themselves or including those that want to use it for the benefit of humanity. That, certainly everyone's heard of different cults or places where people have been taken advantage of. And oftentimes this is what's happened. It's why those people have the power to draw these people in and then actually use them in ways that are not to their best interest. So that, that's kind of what I know about the energy. And I really get a strong sense or a feeling that yours has already been activated. You just don't remember when it maybe occurred. And that's probably why this ecstasy that you feel is quite different than the channeling experience of the group that you're channeling. That is the connection to the high part of yourself. When your Kundalini is fully risen and has gone to the crown, this is where you feel who you really are. That's that feeling of ecstasy, that feeling of you just can't get enough, that knowing of this is who I really am, that expanded feeling, that's you as a human. And then the potential that you have because of that, being open, and the high part of you has to agree to anything that you as a human are going to do. So there'd be no way that you would be channeling the Arcturians or anyone else if your high self wasn't in alignment to that goal or method. And so this is what I've figured out now. There's kind of two separate things going on. You have the Kundalini consciousness, which is at the base of the spine of every human, that anyone with their focus and attention, they can activate it, and for different reasons. It doesn't have to be for the benefit of humanity. Hopefully it is, but it can be activated in anybody. And then you also have this potential that you could attract to yourself through the agreement of this connection and the high part of yourself, other entities that would flow through you because of that energy that you're carrying.
Mm.
So I was just going to ask Robin to just one more thing. I know, Daniel, you mentioned that you were going through a hard period in your life. And was
Yeah.
that am I understanding that to be prior to when you had that amazing experience?
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
had a breakdown it was early March of 2010, and I was in so much pain that I just crawled into bed and started crying and just, was feeling those suicidal tendencies. But I eventually dusted myself off and got up and got back to work that day. I had a home business. I had to move boxes around a lot, and so I was in pain from doing a lot of that sort of thing while having a hernia at the same time. And so it was kind of a nightmarish situation on those days when I had to ship items. And so I did hit that kind of rock bottom. I did feel like I had that rock bottom moment before it happened.
Okay. I was just interested personally because Robin and I were talking a little bit. She's been using me as her test subject for some activations of the Kundalini energy. And I'm kind of in this spot right now. And I know Robin experienced it, and it kind of sounds like you experienced it, where I said I was kind of describing it as just a so what kind of attitude, not really enthusiastic or thrilled about much going on in life. And um, I think every person processes differently, but I was just kind of trying to get a feel for if that then precipitated, the Kundalini in you, having that sort of dark night of the soul or whatever you would
Yeah,
refer to it as.
definitely. I also had been, like I said, I was really into channeling, and I had gotten my Reiki attunement, and I had also been meditating for 45 minutes to an hour a day for over 10 years. Because I also had kind of a chronic fatigue thing where I just was tired all the time. And at a certain point in the day, I would always need to meditate to not feel like a zombie, just a walking dead kind of person. So I would meditate for long periods. And I think that meditation really teaches us how to focus. So when I would do Reiki on people, it was really easy for me to just dial into it right away and be able to access energy. And because I wasn't like doing it the way I was taught to do it, I was just saying like, well, I think that I have to focus and I have to open up and let this energy in. And that's what I was doing. And so that is also, I think, what helps a person to be able to channel is to have that ability to focus. And that's why when people want to channel and I teach channeling, I always tell them, well, you got to actually sit and practice. You have to put in the hours and do it and be consistent about it, because you do get better at focusing, opening up, relaxing, allowing, all those things that are a part of channeling with more practice at doing it. Because as we're going through our day-to-day experiences, we're typically just focusing on what's in our head, and we're not really in the moment. We're not mindful all the time. We're not living that Eckhart Tolle type of lifestyle. Instead, we're just like thinking about what we have to do next or what somebody said to us last week. And so to actually take that time to sit and just be present and focus on the moment and what is available to you, what's going on inside of you, what's available around you is so important to the process.
Sure. So when this started for you in 2010, did you have a lot of family and friends that you shared this with, or was it pretty private to yourself? And if you did share it with people, how was it received?
What happened after that time in March is that I did wind up filing for divorce in June. And so my friends were all Abrahamers, So my wife and I filed for divorce. She moved out. And 2 weeks later, I was on an Abraham cruise. And, I met someone like immediately on the cruise. And she and I became the ones who would Skype together and practice, because in October of that year, I was at an Abraham workshop in Asheville, North Carolina. And those were smaller Abraham workshops. There were like 190 people. So it was a real intimate gathering for them. And I was feeling all the energy and dry heaving. Like I would feel like I was throwing up, even though nothing was coming out of me while I'm sitting there at the Abraham workshop. So I knew, and my friends encouraged me. Like I said, all my friends were into channeling. So they encouraged me to ask Abraham about what's going on. And luckily, I did get called on the next day at the workshop. It was a 2-day workshop. And I asked them, like, what is this? What's happening? And they said, well, you're going to do this thing that Esther does. And you're just going to have to work through your resistance to it, because that's what the dry heaves are. And so being given the green light by Abraham was so huge for me that's when me and my then girlfriend would be practicing all the time over Skype, with me sitting there basically going like this.
We all know that phase.
5 minutes to an hour, just all these weird movements and no sound. And I would just be sitting there, because I've always been a conscious channeler. So I have my own thoughts during it. And I'd just be like, why am I not speaking? Like, what is going on here? And then eventually phonetic sounds started to come through. So the first thing I ever channeled was puh, 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 tuh, 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 ch, 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 k, k, k. And then eventually the group I now call the Creators said, we are here for you. And when they said it, I knew it wasn't me. And that's when I knew I had started channeling. And then from that moment on, I had started to really get into the Bashar material, Bashar's an ET channeled by Daryl Anka. And I got into anybody who was channeling ETs because of my experience. So I knew that one of Bashar's primary teachings is if you want to do something, you don't wait around for an invitation. You do it they say, follow your excitement to the best of your ability. So I knew that I had to channel. Like I had to have workshops. I had to work with people one-on-one. I had to do this thing if I really wanted to do it. And so I started right away, just telling everybody, if you want me to channel for you, just let me know and I'll do it. And I had very willing practice people who I worked with on a regular basis. And so I was channeling pretty much every day. And then once in a while would do workshops in people's homes that I knew through the Abraham group.
Nice.
Yeah, that's how it started.
Yeah. Robin's had a similar situation. She had the facial contortions and the movements, and it took a little bit before the speaking came out. So it sounds like you guys have a little bit similarity going on there.
Yeah. Well, I'll let my group talk for a minute. We are listening, Daniel, to much of your journey and finding it interesting. We're never going to deny that an experience with intention and desire doesn't cause results, but it isn't necessarily the thing that is causing the results. It is the intention and the desire. So as a human decides, Robin was an Abraham Hicks lover too, listened to a lot of their material. She loved listening to channelers. She actually had a very good friend that was a channeler that she knew for over 20 years, became a friend of her. And so she would say, I don't know whether I'm chasing this experience or it's chasing me. So what we would say to a human, that your spirituality is no different really than anything in your life that you want to create an outcome from. You see, if you want to become a doctor, you must go through the rigorous training. You must do the in-service, all of the things that one does in order to obtain that level of perfection. You see, everything is about streams of consciousness. There are people who are focused in something, and then because of that focus and that desire and that love and that attention that they give to it, it creates this stream, or what you would call a stream of consciousness. Let's call it that. There's a stream of consciousness for wellness. There's a stream of consciousness for not wellness. There's a stream of consciousness for spirituality, believe it or not. And when a human decides to dive into that stream of consciousness by watching it, by loving it, by admiring it, by meditating, they expand themselves. They expand themselves to the opportunity that they are loving or focused upon, you see. And so we think it is important that a human follow their own bliss, of course, that if they love to meditate and it brings them joy and they feel like they're getting a connection doing it, by all means, we would say do it, because anything in your joy is where your connection is. But it is not that you have to do it or that you are forced to do it or it is the only way. We tell humans the best way to align to themselves is to pick up the breadcrumbs that you find along the path that are left for you, you see. Some of you, it will be breath work. Some of it will be silent retreats. Some of you, it will be meditation. But whatever that is, you are to follow that bliss, follow that joy, because in that happiness, in that knowing that I'm headed in the direction that feels good to me, this is how you are going to create the experience for yourself that you're wanting to have, you see. Robin experienced a lot of the same things that you're talking about, facial expressions, lots of energy movements as this energy was making its way through her body. And there was definitely a flatlining time, or a period of time where the human has to kind of die off, or you have to let go of the idea that this is who you really are and expand to the idea that this is who you really are in your expanded version. It's quite different than you as a human. When you allow this soul aspect of yourself to start expressing itself, the human gets a little rattled. The egoic part of you that is used to expressing as Daniel or as Robin will go through a withdrawal or a period of shedding themselves. And in this process, you will feel as though life isn't the same. It's not as enjoyable. There are relationships dissolving, such as you are discussing. Things will happen that will change the human's direction of the path that they are on. But as they look back over it, they can see the perfection of it. They understand that this was a trail or something they were following on the journey that belonged to them, that brought them to the place or point in their life that they got to. So we just wanted to add that to your experience, and say that the universe really loves to return on authenticity. When you cried out, when you said, I'm at the bottom, what are you doing really? You are surrendering to a higher source. You are giving up as a human and letting something that you believe in, there it is, and desire to make a better way for you or show you a better way, you see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Daniel, what would you, if you could give a message to our listeners today about what you do and the importance that it has in your life and also for anyone listening to you, what message would you give?
Well, I was 38 when I started channeling. So a lot of people may have heard of others who say, well, I always knew from the time I was 6 years old, I could see entities, or, and they may think, well, that's just for them. Channeling is for those, or having really identifiable spiritual gifts is for those who were born with it and, have it in their family line and, knew from this very early age that they were meant to do this. And I don't think that is true about myself. And I certainly have had a lot of success doing what I do. All starting at age 38 with no background at all in anything other than my own meditation and pursuit of knowledge through spirituality and the application of what I was learning in my life. So I think that my message would be that anyone can do it. And I like that message about following the breadcrumbs too, because what would happen for me is several people would tell me the same thing, and then I would do it. Like, I remember after the third person told me to read Conversations with God, that's when I did it. And that was really my first introduction to channeled material was in 2002. I read that first Conversations with God book. Then I read them all. And then I followed that to somebody said to me, oh, you like channeled material? And I wasn't even really thinking of it as channeled material, but now I know it is. And so they put me on some other books. And then I found the Seth books through the blurb on the back of one of these Emmanuel's books. And then through Seth, I found Abraham, because people that were into Seth were also into Abraham and were nudging me in that direction. You really should check out Abraham. And then I got to go and actually sit and be in that energy, like Athena was saying, to be in the energy of someone who is channeling, that too is an attunement. You're receiving whenever somebody else is channeling. So me going to all these workshops and actually getting on planes and flying to Chicago and Boston and Phoenix and San Antonio and all these different places from LA to go see them and sit in that energy. I didn't even realize what I was doing, but I know now that I was receiving so much from those workshops other than what my mind could comprehend. And so it is really important to do what we truly love and feel called to do. And to me, that was the most interesting and exciting thing I could think of to do.
Yeah.
I would just add to that whole experience. Oh, they're going to add, huh? We're looking again at that time when you talked about the difficulties in your life and the surrender, a giving up process that you went through. What happens is a human has an idea of what they think their life should be, how it's supposed to turn out, what would satisfy them, what would make them happy. And they think in this containment of the human that they are, that they have a pretty good idea of what that is. And then one day they have an experience such as you had, and they decide to throw everything out, just to give up and surrender to whatever there is out there that could maybe save you from what it is you are experiencing. And then all of a sudden, the universe or the high part of you in this connection to you, what does it have really? It has you in the life that you're living. It has every life you've ever lived, and it's got your lineage. So it is delivering to you a package of energy that is so far beyond what you could comprehend as a human. in your mind of what would satisfy you. When you give up, when you surrender, when you come into this kind of alignment with this type of package of energy and power, what you will get, and I think you would agree, Daniel, Robin would agree too, in this channeling experience, in this business of your own, in this assisting other people, in these courses, in these things that you do, could you ever even imagine the satisfaction that you could have felt? And this is what we want to explain to people when you open up to this surrender, when you are able to finally connect to the source that is you. This is why it is so satisfying, because it has the full container. It has all of you, everything, yeah? And all the feelings, all the emotions, all the experience, all the desires, which have, by the way, been received in all that is and elevated to the highest aspect of those desires. So when it connects to you in this surrender, you are not holding any resistance anymore. You have given up. You're not pushing against. You're not opposing anything. You're just flat out with your arms and legs apart, waiting for something to help you or to assist you. And so what comes to you is pretty magnificent in that surrender, you see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard many stories of people talking in that way, of having that moment of real surrender and giving up. And that's when it happens. That's when everything shifts for them. It's not the only way that it can happen, of course, but it's the way that for a lot of us, we have to completely let go and be in that place of open receiving mode to get what's next for us.
Yeah.
I think I watched a little video from Neil Donald Walsh, and that's exactly what happened to him before he started downloading those books that he wrote. He had the same thing. His falling apart. He had that moment of screaming out in the middle of the night, I've had enough. And all of a sudden, the books started arriving, the transmissions of those books. So I agree with you. I think it does happen. I can't say that I definitely did go through that flat, dull, dark period during that Kundalini rising time. I didn't have the full life falling apart, although my kids leaving to college and my life kind of dissolving as a mother and a caregiver definitely left me, pretty empty, feeling it almost in a state of grief. I would say I'd describe it that way. So it's certainly not to the degree that you experienced, but there was definitely a longing and a kind of a giving up. I just kind of got to the point where I had my first grandchild, and I thought, if I never do another thing, I've got two great sons, I've got these adorable grandkids, and I think that's enough. I'm enough. I don't need to be something or accomplish something. And I think that's the biggest thing I've gotten all this is I've just realized that you're not really here to quote unquote leave your mark or become anything. Nobody's really any higher than or better than anybody else. It's just that acceptance of the life that you've lived and the experiences that you've had. You're not really in judgment of how you did them. And that for me was probably the biggest gift in this, is just giving up the idea that I had to become something or do something better than what I had already done. And in that way, it kind of opened up this whole new side or place in my life to what I'm doing now.
I wanted to ask, because I know that you brought up a very dark period in your life and that you contemplated suicide, even though you didn't want to go through it because of your, experience with your ex-wife now. I'm just wondering, for people that are at that place in their life where they're feeling like suicidal or they're feeling really down on their life, when you look back now at your life the way it is now and all that's transpired since the time that you felt that way, how do you feel now looking back at that time? Just to give perspective to someone that might be in a dark place in their life as you were.
Those dark places are the absolute turning points. And I also listen to and watch a lot of videos of people talking about their near-death experiences, whether they tried to commit suicide and failed, or they got in a car accident or whatever. And they go through a lot in those death experiences that they have. And most of them come out of it completely changed, and they have spiritual gifts. And I do think that it's just part of the path. I know so many people have hit that rock bottom feel. And especially the new agers who are awake, feel like they don't really fit in. This world is not for them. They have no interest in the American dream of the 2 cars, 2 kids, picket fence life, and working a corporate job and all that. So I think so many people have at least the thought of it, like, I don't want to be here. And it's usually a very big turning point, I think, for people to get to that place. And it is a surrendering to, when you realize that you're absolutely supposed to have experienced everything that you did to get you to a point where it can stimulate actual growth. If you think about it, when things don't work out the way that you planned with your mind or wanted them to work out, then it's always because there's something else and there's something better. And it's just hard to see that when you're gripping so tightly onto the version of yourself and your life that you thought you were supposed to be living. So to be able to let that go and say, okay, I just get it now that this is not really what my life is supposed to be about. I do think that it's that moment of saying, I don't want to do this anymore, is also saying, I don't want to be attached anymore to what I thought I was supposed to be doing or living. And so it's, luckily, I'd say the vast majority of people don't take any sort of action after having those thoughts. But I also, and I used to work in mental health before all of this, back in 1994, my first job was a mental health worker. And I worked for 3 years with people who were, post hospitalization and living in halfway homes sort of thing, and going to the program where I worked, and they were heavily medicated. And while I do think that there is a place for pharmaceuticals in the world today, and sometimes we do need them, that for a person to get to that point of being depressed or feeling those suicidal thoughts and then go and try to fix it with pharmaceuticals probably also isn't the way. It's not, you don't want to deaden yourself to your emotions. And even if your emotions are really hard to feel and no one else can relate to them and what you're feeling, that it is something that we're meant to go through. We're all meant to feel every emotion. It's just when we're feeling them, they can be so hard that we think, well, there must be some sort of escape. And sometimes it's not pharmaceuticals for people, but it's drugs or alcohol, street drugs and alcohol that people use to get away from them.
Yeah. So I'm just going to have both of your channeling groups weigh in on this after I say it. But it sounds to me like maybe the message is, if someone is in a dark place, rather than feel like they need to be in control and take matters into their own hands and either leave the world through suicide or whatever they are trying to control from their human, instead of doing that, they should just surrender and know that in that surrender, something better is coming. So we'll start with Athena, if you'd like to weigh in on that, what your thoughts are on that.
So what is the question, Heidi? We are.
If someone is in a dark place and they're feeling suicidal, or they're feeling like they don't want to live the life they're in anymore, would it be best just to surrender and let go of it?
We would say never surrender.
Okay.
There's so much for a human to learn, and in the experience they've come here to learn. But what we would tell you is that a human is a remarkable tool. Let's use that term. And these experiences keep getting magnified. They will get louder and louder and louder until you finally hear them. And when you do hear them, and you might get the thought, I'm going to leave the world, I can't take any more of the volume that I'm hearing, but take that as a sign or signal that you are ready for change. And we love Daniel's words when he said, something better is coming. That you have to acknowledge what you hold within you. That is actually the thing that's preventing you from something better, that wants to enter A human will look at their negative thoughts as though they are bad. They should try to get rid of them. They should sit in silence and obliterate them. And many have a struggle doing it. And we would tell you for good reason. Your negative thoughts are nothing more than what you hold within you that separate you from the desires that you hold that you want to become. So you have something that you are desiring, you want something, and then the human will respond by saying, you're too old, you don't look good enough, you haven't made any money so far. Every little thing that is within you that you hold as a truth, it's not really a truth, but you hold it as a truth. It's actually the preventative thing that's stopping you from obtaining what you want. There's simply nothing that a human cannot get if they clean up this rhetoric, this untruth that they have decided to align to as truth. And then it just creates in their experience and then makes them think it's even more true because they're getting it in form. You are a creator through the thoughts and feelings that you have, but you can modify those. You can decide to pick and choose in the mastery that you are, how you want to feel, how you want to emanate, and therefore the life that you would like to get because of it. So this point that you get to, this breaking point, is a good place to be because you have finally heard the call. It's been going on for a long time before you ever get to that point, and you can no longer ignore it. And this is where the change is. This is where the better life is. This is it, you see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess maybe I'm not using the right word when I say surrender, but oftentimes people have to get to that place of hearing it over and the message getting louder and louder before they can actually let go of their attachment to it. Maybe that's a better way of putting it. Yeah. And Daniel, would your group like to weigh in on that?
Yes, I just want
Yes.
to prepare everyone for my bringing them in, which is not as seamless as it is for Robin.
Okay.
There's tones and sounds and movements and things that happen that are a part of the transmission. They're not me doing it. They're part of what is coming through me before the words come. And
Okay.
so I had to switch my audio for musicians and put my headphones on because I've done enough Zoom interviews to know that this is necessary when the tones come through for them to actually be heard by the people, and the tones are healing and transformative, and they open up portals and things for people. So it's a good idea for people not to try to figure out what's happening, but instead just experience what's happening as the Arcturians come in through me. And then once they're here, I'll just stay in the channeling state so you
Okay.
can ask them whatever you want.
Sounds great.
Greetings. Well, the Arcturian Council. Well, pleased. With all of you. Yes, yes, yes. We have been listening in on this conversation with great interest and welcome the opportunity to put our 2 cents in. We know that many people are living lives that they don't necessarily want to be living, or that there are things in their lives that they find to be intolerable in some way. Many people feel that they are in between a rock and a hard place, and that they are being given impossible tasks to complete or things to accept that they find to be unacceptable. And it is through the resistance to the life that the individual is living that they come to that conclusion that there must be a way out, and an easy way out of the situation they find themselves in. However, the easiest way to release the angst and the feelings of despair that the individual is experiencing is to get to that place of acceptance of everything as it is, to be able to look at one's life without resistance, without defining it as negative or seeing it as wrong in some way, but instead looking for that opportunity that the life is presenting them with for their spiritual growth and evolution. That is when the person turns it all around and gets to that place where they realize that they are the joy, the love, the freedom, the excitement, the creativity that they seek in their lives, that it is inside of them, and that the circumstances of their life do not control them or control how they feel, but instead that they are making a choice to resist their circumstances, to judge themselves and their circumstances and the other people who are involved in their lives as being wrong. And when they let go of that, when they let go of judgment, resistance, fear, everything that is heavy and holding them back from living the life that they truly want to live, that is when so much can melt away that was there just to get them to see what they've been holding on to see that reflection that they needed to see. And when they do that, everything can change, and usually does change for the individual, because they have been willing to take that moment of introspection to say, what is this about? What am I doing here? Why is this the way that it is? And so when someone's life does fall apart in that sense, it does cause them to then have to reflect in ways that they wouldn't if they were living the life of their dreams. If they had everything they wanted and everything always went smoothly and they were with the perfect partner, then it would be easy just to get caught up in the material world and all the bright and shiny things and bright and shiny people that they had to play with, and never have that moment of having to look within, which is what despair does, which is what that moment of absolute giving up on living that life of their dreams does for the person. Is they absolutely must look within themselves then and see what needs to be changed within the self, rather than the attempts that are usually made by individuals to change everything that is outside of them first. And so that's why it becomes a powerful moment of transformation, is because when you cannot change the circumstances because you don't have the money, or you don't have the time, or you don't have the support to change the circumstances, then the only thing left to change is you. And most people do find that it is easier to change themselves than to change everything outside of themselves anyway.
Okay. Robin, did you have any questions for the group that Daniel channels?
I really enjoyed the toning. I did experience something like that years ago. I went on a retreat to Sedona, and there was a lovely lady there, I wish I could remember her name, who did chakra toning with her voice. And yours reminded me of that, where it stimulated the energy centers. So that's my question is that actually what's going on? Is that actually a vibration stimulator to the energy centers of a human's body? Or is that actually stimulating the centers of Daniel's body in order to channel you?
Both. So it is for him and for everyone who is going to receive us, to get us all on the same wavelength, to get all the tuning forks vibrating at the same frequency, so that we can have a meaningful experience, an exchange of energies. And the toning also serves to open portals for energies to come in, not only for Daniel here, but for all the recipients of the channeling, as everyone who receives channeling is also receiving energies as they sit and listen or read it.
Okay, interesting. Yeah.
That kind of confirms a little bit what you said earlier about going to all the Abraham Hicks things that you went to as Daniel, how that kind of actually progressed your journey or stimulated you in some way. So you would say that any type of study or the following of other spiritual people in general,
Yes.
you could actually absorb some of that energy or use it as a tool for yourself.
Yes, indeed. And it goes all the way back to those times when what people did in India was they went and they saw the guru and they sat with the guru and they felt the energy coming off of the guru, and they were getting attunements and they were getting their chakras aligned by sitting in the presence of someone who had done that work for themselves. So everyone is blazing a trail, everyone is lighting the way for others when they are willing to do the work that is necessary to get themselves into a state where this type of energy flow is possible.
Okay. I would like to ask if you would have any messages for our audience today, what would they be?
We want to assure you that you are at this turning point as a human collective, that you have come to a place of recognition as a society that things have not been working out in the ways that you have set up your society, that you do need to make changes, and that the changes always begin with the individual, that as an individual you must look within yourself and see the government, the country, the community, the society that you are a part of as a reflection of something that is going on within you, including all of the systems that you would like to see changing as well, as people understand there need to be changes in the way that you deal with your economy and your education and your planet, as the planet Earth is showing that there's toxicity within the human being that needs to be addressed. And so you see that as polluted air, polluted water, polluted food. And so each individual then must say, this is a turning point for us all. And we always look at the timelines where humanity does rise up with its level of consciousness and make the changes within the individual and the collective to see the positive changes that you want to see out there in your world. And as soon as people stop shaking their fists at whoever they think is to blame and start looking within for the ways that they can change, the ways that they can find inner peace, they can spread more love, more joy, and act with more kindness towards their fellow humans, that's when you'll see the world outside of you transforming to fit all of that and to reflect all of that to each individual. So you don't have to worry about what anyone else is doing. You don't have to make anyone else change or convince anyone else to start doing something differently or to believe what you believe. You just have to say, what can I do? How can I shift within myself to be the version of myself that I know I am here to be the fullest expression of source energy that I can possibly be while still being in a physical body, and then know that everything outside of me will reflect that, including the way that I affect other people, like the guru, that I can walk with peace and love and joy dripping off of me and see how others smile and see how others light up when I am in their presence, so that they can too benefit from the work that I have done on myself. And instead of getting on a soapbox and telling everyone else how they can change, how they can become that better version of themselves, I can set the example and I can go out into the world and spread that good energy around. And as people take that on as their mission and their responsibility, then they absolutely can experience that world that so many of you are dreaming of, a world of peace and harmony, equality, freedom, creativity, and joy.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's a wonderful message, and I think it probably is dead on aligned with something that Athena would say. I've heard her say that very same
I
message
can
many
add one
times.
more thing to what he said. We are congruent in his thinking. And Heidi, yes, you have heard us say the same thing. But the one other thing we would like to mention is the power of one, the power that a human has in doing what Mr. Scranton has just said, is that they can actually heal themselves. And in that healing of themselves, it travels back through the lineage. They pull that stream of consciousness out of every human that ever lived before them and anyone that will ever live after them. So the changes that one person makes in the healing of themselves affects the entire lineage that they are a part of. So think of the size or the mass numbers that are affected when you are the one that is doing this kind of work, you see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah. Yes, indeed.
Yes. Well, I think that we're coming to the end of our time. So if we could bring Daniel back, and
yes,
we'd like to have him share how to get a hold of him and what he's doing now, and how people can get in touch.
Very good. We are the Arcturian Council, and we have enjoyed connecting with you.
Thank you.
Hi, guys.
Hi. Very nice message, Daniel. Thank you.
Thank you. That was fun.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Yeah. So how can people get a hold of you, and you want to tell us what you have upcoming?
Yes, I have a website called danielscranton.com, and I have thousands of videos on my YouTube channel. which is also just called Daniel Scranton. And the main thing I have coming up is a big channeling course that spans months and is 18 hours in total class time, as well as the opportunity for classmates to get together and channel with each other. And I call it my Learn to Channel mega course. And if people want to go to my site and find that, it's danielscranton.com/mega to sign up for that. It starts on the 23rd of May.
Okay, awesome. Well, it was so nice having this exchange with you. We've been waiting a long time to do so, but I'm happy we made it happen today. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I would just like to mention, Heidi, what we have going on.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah.
A book out on Amazon. It's called Choose Your Universe, and I'm really
Oh,
very
I've seen that.
from all
Yeah.
the people that
Mhm.
have read it, gotten it. I really appreciate that. Heidi has written a course that follows the book that we're going to be doing in July. So we have that up on our website. We've also started doing a Q&A subscription on our website where people can actually use this for personal use if they have a issue or a problem in their life or something that they're wanting to sort out without having to book a private session. They can use the Q&A for that service, or if they have any other individual question that they'd like to ask of the group. We're going to be doing that for 2 hours a month. And then there's also lots of writings and newsletters that go out randomly to those that are members of that. And that can also be signed up on the site. I do private sessions at Athena and Truth, and all of my other material, my podcast, my YouTube are all under Athena and Truth if anybody's interested in those things. Heidi takes care of all my correspondence. It's Heidi@athenaandtruth.com. We welcome other guests that like to come on. Any other material that would be pertinent to the show, they can contact Heidi at that email.
Yeah. And one final just plug I want to give to the Q&A is so often if you don't have your own question, you think, oh, I don't know if this is something that I would want to do. But listening to answers from others' questions is so powerful, and you get so much out of it, even if it isn't your own question. Just listening to others' questions and having them answered can have a deep impact on you. So I just wanted to share that as well. And thank you, everyone, for listening. And thank you, Daniel, for coming on.
Yes, thank you. My pleasure.